Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Town Council meeting of Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021 at 6 o'clock. We'll start off with roll call.
Council members Dennison.
Here.
Droz.
Here.
Lombardo.
Here.
Schooler.
Here.
And Mayor Abel.
Here. We'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll be leading that. And if Pastor Stephen Jones from Crossview Bible Church logs on, we'll have him do our invocation. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor Jones, are you here with us online?
Looks like you're going to have to fill in, Merle.
All right, thank you. Go ahead and be seated. Well, it is a great pleasure tonight that we have a presentation tonight. It's my pleasure that we would receive a presentation from Mr. Mark Goodell, General Manager of Morongo Basin Transit Authority. For those who do not know, the Morongo Basin Transit Authority, MBTA as all of us call it, provides mass transportation services all over the Morongo Basin, including services to and from the Marine Corps Base, as well as down to Palm Springs area. MBTA is a joint powers authority of the town, county of San Bernardino, and the city of 29 Palms. Mr. Goodell serves as a general manager of the authority, and a position that he's held since 2019. Mark's done a fantastic job, and he's been with the MBTA in different capacities for over 13 years. So Mark, welcome.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm going to remove this if you don't mind. Thank you for having me. We're going to talk a little bit about our organization. I know many of you may know MBTA very well, but then I know there's some folks that may not. So what I'd like to do is run through just a 10-15 minute PowerPoint presentation if I could. All right, thank you very much. Well, as you see, as Mayor Abel had mentioned, we are a joint powers authority with the town of Yucca Valley, city of 29 Palms, county of San Bernardino. Also, we're supported by the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, SBCTA as they are known. MBTA is our organization and our fleet. We're supported by 3 different departments totaling 39 employees. We have our operations, which is comprised of 30 employees. Our maintenance is comprised of 4 staff, working supervisor, technicians, mains parts clerks, servicers, as well as our administrative staff that take care of all of the, the administrative duties, make sure everybody gets paid, make sure all of our grants are completed well and turned in so we can continue to have funding. So 39 total employees that supports a service by using 24 total vehicles. We have 24 vehicles in our fleet. All of them are powered by natural gas. We use 14 vehicles in peak service. So at our peakest time, we have 14 vehicles in service. 4 of them are heavy-duty transit buses. Some of you may have seen a newer looking bus out there. That's one of our intercity coaches we just brought on board. And that bus there is designed to bring residents within the basin to and from, as far as east of, as far as 29 Palms into Yucca Valley and beyond. Our 12 of our light medium cutaways serve our inner city sometimes, but mostly generally our neighborhood shuttles that serve the interiors of Yucca and 29 Palms, as well as 8 light duty cutaway ready ride vehicles. As you'll see here, here's a mixture of these types of vehicles. The one at the top is the newest one that we had deployed. The bottom 3 is just our light, our medium, and our heavy duty vehicles, as well as some other ones that are in action. So that's what serves the basin. Talk a little bit about MBTA's transportation options. We offer about 4 different options. 3 of them are our main core of what we do, and that's our fixed route service that you will see that we have our Route 1 intercity, like I said, that travels back and forth along the main corridor of 62. Then we have our north and south routes of Yucca Valley, which is our Route 7s. Then we have the Route 3s that serve 29 Palms, some that go right to direct service to the base, and some that serve the actual community of 29 Palms. We also have service to Landers. That's our fixed route service. One thing that's interesting about this type of service is what we do is deviated fixed route. In other communities, you would have some sort of on-demand service that would operate in conjunction with your fixed route. We obligate and meet the ADA by doing deviation. So folks, during the time that some of these routes don't run in the evening, we can get deviations to supplement some of that. We have our Ready Ride service, which is primarily our origin to destination. It's our reservation type system, generally for the elderly and the disabled, but the general public can use it. It's primarily designed for folks that have trouble utilizing fixed route services and getting to a bus stop or some sort of disability or something, that mobility issue that may prevent them from getting to a bus stop and having access on and off. So they utilize the Ready Ride service. That too, we serve Yucca Valley, Morongo Valley, 29 Palms, as well as Joshua Tree and parts of Wonder Valley. So that's more of our specialized type service. Then we have our commuter service that operates 7 days a week primarily. Our Route 12 is our commuter service designed to get folks from Yucca Valley down into some of the more destination areas in the Palm Springs area, either whether it's Amtrak or it's the hospital or it's in downtown. Our Route 15 is designed kind of similar, but it starts out at the Marine Corps base Friday through Sunday and offers them an opportunity to get out of the basin, go into the lower desert. Our last option that we have here is what we call as our TREP program. This one here is based on, we had to submit an application through the federal government. It's called the 5310 grant, may be familiar with that. It's a competitive type grant. So what we did is we designed a trip reimbursement escort program. Basically what this is, it's a mileage reimbursement transportation service that complements the MBTA in areas in which may be underserved or not served entirely. So this gives someone an opportunity to find a volunteer driver that be willing to take them to the doctor's office. When it doesn't necessarily have to be local, they fill out an application, it's reviewed by our committee, and our committee can establish, okay, you can have a maximum of 500 miles per month at a rate of 30 cents. So this volunteer driver can take them to their medical appointments. It's unrestricted mileage, but it gives people an opportunity to still access Lifeline services and still feel comfortable and traveling with someone that they trust. And this is our TREP program. It is funding dependent, like I mentioned. We recently just got awarded it this early spring of last year. So it went into effect in the summer, so we'll have it for another probably 2.5, 3 years until we get an opportunity to reapply that the program has been successful. Talk about ridership, this is not just something that's taken place locally, but this is something, a national phenomenon that nationwide transit agencies are dealing with reduction of ridership for many different reasons. 2020 was on a good path for MBTA. Then we were all hit with the pandemic, which really hit really hard for us. But declining ridership, not just for us, but for like nationwide. I mean, there's many factors. You know, we have such a fluctuation in gas prices for those folks that are discretionary, that have an option, whether they to take the bus or take their car. You've got some lower unemployment rates in some areas. Some more people are purchasing vehicles. There's been some statutes that have been changed that have allowed certain folks to be able to obtain driver's licenses, along with that, get opportunities to get personal vehicles, as well as change in ridership patterns. Change in ridership patterns really do a lot of things, especially like, for example, MBTA saw a huge decline when Walmart came in, because what happened was Walmart was further west. Everybody that lives across the street from Walmart now would have to take the bus to get to Walmart. Now they're just walking across the street. So they're finding alternatives, they're finding different ways to move about. So, so like I said, I was talking a little bit in terms of the pandemic about how MBTA's ridership was affected. We saw anywhere up to a 60% reduction in our ridership. That's a huge, tremendous hit. Fortunately, that sounds like a lot, but I mean, there's other agencies within the nation that have seen suffrages up to 80%. 80% to the point where they're actually having to cut back service 20%, and they're having to lay off, you know, hundreds of drivers and things like that because of their reduction in revenue, their reduction in ridership, and the routes are not just productive at that, so they're having to make some real tough choices. Fortunately, MBTA has not been in that scenario. We've been running service since day one, since this whole thing took place. We did have an interruption in our commuter type services. That's because there was a lot of restrictions that took place down in the Riverside County area. But we saw a 60%. However, when, according to this next slide, this was since January of last year, I thought what we saw was a bottom out in August of about 10,000. And then we started to see some incremental increases. But then as we started to see an increase in the positive cases in November and December, they just nosedove again. So I think we're going to be on this up and downward trend for a few months until everything kind of gets settled. One of the biggest things that we need to do is, as an agency, continue to take a look at our ridership trends, and most of all, rebuild customer confidence, because you know, there's a lot of articles that have taken place where people don't want to go back to transit because they're fearful of it, you know, because they think that's a place that, you know, this stuff just can easily manifest. But so that's our goal, is to boost confidence. We do that by making sure we're continuously cleaning our vehicles, promoting that, having people doing press releases. I mean, just doing whatever we can to try to increase the confidence of the consumer to come back. Some facts about the MBTA. We operate on a $4 million budget. MBTA is funded through several sources. We have our Transit Development Act. We have state transit assistance funds. We have federal transit administration funds, as well as whatever type of funding we get that comes through our fare box. So with a reduction in our ridership up to 60%, you can see where we may have lost some revenue from our fare box. However, one thing that does help MBTA very well is that there's a lot of programs out there and initiatives that MBTA can take advantage of, and opportunities to help pay for, you know, either capital improvement projects, meaning we can buy new buses, we can improve our facilities, we can improve our CNG stations. We can do fare subsidies. We applied for some some low-carbon transit operating program dollars last year to help subsidize the fare for CMC students for the entire year. So that was one thing, as well as the TREP program. A little bit back to the revenue loss. The one good saving grace that we have was through the CARES Act funding. This here has really been able to help the MBTA, one, stay afloat, not have to lay off anybody, make ourselves not necessarily whole, but also two, we've had a tremendous amount of expenses related to the safety protocols that we had to put in place. So there's those things. So the CARES funding has been very important to us. I'm talking a little bit about fares. We raised our fares about 7 years ago. Prior to that, the last time we raised fares was in 1999. About a year and a half ago, we implemented a full marketing campaign. Some of you may have even seen some flyers come in the mail of try transit, ride the bus for free. That was a very good campaign, and it really started to see some ridership growth. We've also had the redevelopment of our website. This is a quick view of our homepage. We have a trip planner at the top, very easy to use. Put in where you're at. You can put in City Hall and you want to go to Walmart. When do you want to go? And it will bring you up the times. It'll bring you fares. It'll really give you a detailed explanation on how to get where you need to go. The map is very interactive. You can click on any of the color lines and it will bring up a schedule, and you can find where you're at and where you need to go. So it's very interactive. There's information on fares. We have a link at the very top of our COVID-19 service interruption information. This here, I'm not expecting anybody to be able to really see or read this, but this is just an idea of our service area and how vast and how much we actually cover, from all the way up to the base, all the way into 29 Palms, your north and south of Yucca Valley, as well as the blue lines over there, which is Landers. It's a pretty large loop for us to take, as well as our Palm Springs service. Some of our MBTA's initiatives. I pride ourselves very much on the ongoing efforts of staff and being able to help bring improvements of safety and accessibility of our bus stop program and its amenities. We're always continuously doing upgrades. We're doing sometimes putting bus shelters in locations we weren't quite completely aware of. I think we've got kind of past that, but we're really prideful of where the types of stops we can provide to the community, safer, accessible stops, more well-lit stops. A couple of things we're going to take a look at. Once we know where the economy is in terms of scale as far as transit, I know we have a lot of state transit associations that do a lot of campaign and advocating for transit, for dollars, to make sure that transit still is a viable option nationwide. We're going to look at some route alignments. Recently we had a short-range transit plan done, and there were some recommendations to maybe do some realignments and change maybe some of the way that we deliver service. So we'll take a look at those when the time is right. We're looking at some potential land acquisition for a future 29 Palms Transit Center. Right now, we're operating out of a 0.4 acre little lot, and as we start to grow, so will the MBTA's needs. Our transit center here in town, I think we'll be well set on that one for a very long time. A couple of other things that we're looking at, got some conference calls set up, is
This
looking
conference
into...
will now be recorded.
Sorry.
Okay. So I'm still good? Okay. Technology, cashless fare system options. So not everybody has to buy a pass. Not everybody has to carry money. There can be some cashless fare options through a bus app. We're looking at some real-time bus tracking information that someone can go look on an app if they have the capability and see where their next bus is, or they can go onto the website and do the same thing there. Some of the other initiatives that we have, we've got a pretty comprehensive rolling stock replacement program. So over the next 4 years, we have plans on replacing over 20 buses, including the introduction of a zero-emission battery electric bus. We're going to be doing this ahead of the 2026 Innovative Clean Transit Regulation mandated. I put small operators, but it's actually going to be all transit operators within the state of California. Come 2026, and all small operators such as MBTA, all of our purchases that we will be doing and all of our procurements will have to be for zero-emission battery electric bus. So we have a couple within our procurement right now. We have a funding opportunity in the next couple weeks. I'm looking to potentially acquire, procure a zero-emission battery electric van and test that, do that as a test for our other services and how it's going to hold up, the range and things like that. I know that's one of the big deals right now with battery electric buses is the range and your infrastructure. So some of the buses right now, you can, for almost $300,000, get a bus that gets you 150 miles. And that's where they are right now. But technology is improving daily. I mean, what I saw last year, you might get 110 to 120 miles. Now you're somewhere between 150 to 170. So as the batteries start getting improved, so will our ranges. It's going to be a real test for us here at MBTA because we have many different factors we have to consider. Is hills. We're not quite that flat, but that's going to take some extra battery power. Our ACs, the heat. How is the battery going to hold up within the heat and some of the cold? So that's going to be our opportunity to monitor that, as well as MBTA operations and transit center facility upgrades. We've done some video surveillance upgrades at all of our facilities. We've done improved energy efficient lighting, more safer lighting, light up more area, parking lot, roadway resurfacing, bus stop and shelter revitalization projects. Those are continuously ongoing. So with that, I've taken some of your time and I really appreciate it. That would conclude my presentation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Any members of the public would like to ask Mark a few questions or make a few comments? All right. Anybody on the council would like to make a comment or ask a question? Yeah, go right ahead.
Hey, Mark, thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you.
I have two questions. With the electric vehicles, the range, how does that compare to compressed natural gas?
Probably, electric is probably about a third of what we would get out of compressed natural gas. Some of our buses we can go 250, 300 miles, 400 miles. And this one here, yeah, I understand where you're going because that means a couple things are going to happen. You're going to have to either double the size of your fleet or get creative on how you will charge these. You know, there maybe have to do some construction at some of the transit centers where you can put in-ground charging where they will get a quick burst charge. They're working on technology, or I think it's even going on now, where a 10-minute charge sitting at a spot in like the transit center could get them 10 miles. So you can just do burst charging. So, yeah, there is definitely a considerable difference.
Thank you. And one other question, Copper Mountain College, what percentage of your ridership was Copper Mountain College before COVID? Because I know the buses are there all the time, and I see students getting on. And now there's, a lot less students showing up on campus. So is that a big part of your
Would
ridership?
probably account for anywhere from 17 to 22,000 trips.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Sounds like you got a lot going on there with all the different routes you have to maintain and the different buses. What is the mileage of one loop of the entire system? And then what would be one loop of like the Landers loop? And how many buses do you have at any one time on that loop?
On the Landers route specifically, we got one route. Mileage, I think it's 40, I would like to say 47 miles.
Okay, so you have 47 miles and your bus, electric bus in the future will do 170, you say?
Probably 170 in a
So
day.
that's like
Yeah,
4 trips.
maybe 4 trips.
Around. And then do you have more than one bus dedicated to each loop?
If, that is one of the things that we're going to have to experiment with on how we're going to charge these and how we're going to be able to continuously keep them charged. It may come down to modifying some routes to help accommodate the mileage. It might go to some more demand, kind of ready ride type services, to more origin to destination. It could also mean more in-ground charging at different types of bus stops. It's still a very new concept for especially
Right.
small agencies.
And for us out in the rural areas, is it maybe more economic to go to smaller buses that, do we have the ridership where we're putting 15, 20 people in the bus on a trip that goes through Landers or to 29 Palms, that kind of thing? Are there enough riders at any one time where you need that big of a bus or service?
That's going to be that's going to be part of the analysis as well.
Okay, that needs to be
The
looked at.
van that I'm looking at is a little bit smaller, can still hold about 9 to 11 plus 2 persons with disabilities
Yeah.
and chairs. That might be the way to go rather than the standard cutaway bus that we're using today.
Right.
Yeah, and as well as the big, larger buses, the one like I said that's new. The nice thing about that is I can have that thing completely retrofitted into battery electric.
Oh, I see.
Without spending the entire cost.
And that's the trend. You see California's going all electric.
Yes.
Even compressed gas is going to be phased out,
Yes,
even though it may make more sense.
yes,
Okay. Thank you.
yes.
And I believe also, to answer your question, like the Landers route would have one operator at the time, so there's not like 2 buses going around.
That was, in the future, is that when we have a population that really rides the buses more, as California becomes more expensive in gasoline and more push towards electric, do you anticipate a time when there'll be more than one on the circuit so it doesn't take an hour between trips?
That is correct. And a matter of fact, part of the short-range transit plan that we went through looked at those types of models and being able to increase the frequency. But prior to increasing the frequency, we have to have the demand.
And you also analyze whether it's better to buy 3 small vehicles and have 3 drivers than to have 1 large vehicle and 1 driver
Correct.
on a particular pattern.
There's a lot of logistics involved in.
Oh, it is, I'm sure.
trying to-
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, very much for that presentation. Always had a lot of interest in public services, especially transportation. The Ready Ride, I've spoken to residents in the area. It is beneficial, I don't think people really understand how important that is to some people that have difficulties. And when you do that kind of a valet service almost, where they're welcomed when they're called and they request a ride and they make sure they get to and from their destination, is quite a relief for a lot of people and their families too. So thanks for that. The local neighborhood service that you do, I go to other areas and watch that locally. They'll have street corners right inside of neighborhood areas, and you'll see people that just daily use that service. And that's another thing that's just a few steps down, from their house. So outside of, getting to the highway and looking at what we see traditionally, bus stops, those are valuable, but I think people don't see how much is going on in the back end of our community. And so thanks for keeping those services. I had two questions. One, do we still have services that go into the park? And the other one was, you talked about your budget at $4.1 million. Does that include fare box? Because with the declining ridership, looks like you're about 250,000 people or so up and down a year, and we can see that change with today's environment. So how does that affect your budget and your sustainability?
Well, the nice thing is that the CARES Act funds helps us supplement that. So we're able to utilize the CARE funds to go towards operating costs. So we've had, I'd say, about a $40,000 reduction in revenue from the passenger fares, which is made up through the CARES funds.
Okay, so that balances your
That balances
4.1
it out,
back
yes.
out again. And then do we still have services, the park is quite busy. Are there services for the park, or at least that area?
Unfortunately, that service was discontinued at both the national park as well as the MBTA side. I can't necessarily speak completely for the national park side, but I believe that there was some funding constraints, as well as from the MBTA side, there was some ridership issues.
Well, I appreciate you guys going through the analysis to try those types of services and see if maybe someday they'll come back again, or if they're just not the most efficient. So I know it was a lot of work doing that program, and I think we have to go down those roads once in a while to see what fits us.
We proved that the service works, and we proved that the service can be efficient. We just didn't have the ridership, and I think it's something that will be revisited in the future. I'm just not quite sure how far in the future that would be, or what type of infrastructure changes the park might need to go to help drive that type of service to be kind of equivalent to some of the other national parks that do the same thing.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your
Yeah.
service.
Yeah, and thank you, Mark. That was a pilot program that was a great cooperation between the county, the city of 29 Palms, and the Park Service to try to provide ridership into the national park. And I think, as Mark was saying, the ones that are the most successful in the national parks are those national parks where they restrict cars from going any further, so you're forced to get on a shuttle bus to be able to get through the part of the park. So it's very, very hard to convince people coming up all the way from, let's say, Los Angeles or Orange County to give up a vehicle right when they were about ready to go into the park. It didn't have the advantage. People love to have their own vehicle and the things that they had with them. So it was a bit of a challenge, but it was great. And Mark is willing to work and be creative and try things, which I like to see in management, not just say, well, we've never done it before, so we're not even going to try. So it was a great partnership. It was a good social experiment, and probably, like you said, it'll come back in some other form somewhere else down the line. And also with the national park, they need to obviously work on their ability to get people in and out of the park instead of bottlenecking at the choke points. So reconfiguring their entrances and exit from the park, they'll probably have to work on as well. Thank you, Mark, again. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. I'll move on to approval of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion approval of agenda.
I'll second.
Council members Dennison,
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Mayor Abel.
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on to consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are routine matters or formal documents covering previous town council instruction. Items are enacted by one motion and a second without separate discussion unless a member of the town council or town staff requests dialogue on a specific item at the beginning of the meeting. Requests for public comments on a consent agenda item should be filed with the town clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak to comment on the consent agenda?
No, I have no requests to speak yet.
All right. Anyone here in our audience online, as well as here in the room, would like to make a comment on a consent agenda item? Seeing and hearing none, I'll ask for a motion. Or is any council member wishing to pull an items? Excuse me. Seeing none, I'll need a motion.
I'm good, and I'd like to make the motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Dennison,
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Mayor Abel.
Yes. Item 6 was a public hearing. I understand staff has a report to give about this particular item. Jordan?
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening there was an item for a scheduled public hearing, but the required notice was not posted by the local paper and publication. Therefore, it's my recommendation is to table the item until your next meeting at February 16th. Since the item will be discussed at that time, we would recommend that public comment be deferred until then. However, Mayor, it would be appropriate to allow for any public comment if anyone has planned on speaking on this item tonight. So again, if there's no public comment, then it is staff's recommendation at this time to table the item until February 16th.
Very good. Thank you, Jordan. And our legal staff has consensus on that we cannot move forward with this public hearing until we have proper notice given. Is there anyone that's joining us tonight that wanted to make a comment on this particular item? Item number 6, Community Development Block Grant. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead. I'll make a motion that we postpone until our next council meeting. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second. We'll fight for it.
Councilmembers Dennison,
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Mayor Abel.
Yes. Thank you. We're going to move to department reports. Item number 7.
I believe that's me with the CSA dashboard. So again, Mayor and Council, thank you this evening for the flexibility to present online. I can't see you guys, so that's a little different. But basically, for some context, the department report is for the California State Auditor's local high-risk dashboard. The California State Auditor's Office is the state of California's independent external auditor. Beginning in October 2019, the CSA office compiled financial data from cities across the state to provide detailed information on their fiscal health. From this data compilation, the interactive local high-risk dashboard was created and published online. So I'll provide you a brief walkthrough of the dashboard. I was told I can screen share, so we will try this. Let me know if you can't see anything. But we will go ahead and go forward with that. Great. So here is your CSA dashboard. This is at auditor.ca.gov. The link is also in the agenda packet. And I'll just provide you a brief walkthrough and then also go over the Town of Yucca Valley's results of the fiscal health factors that the CSA office used to determine the town's ranking. So basically, when you log on to the website here, you're confronted with this large map in the center. This is the state of California, and it has the location and ranking of every city that participates with the auditor office's financial data reporting. So we send in our CAFR, and they see our pension costs, et cetera, and they put all that information together for a fiscal health risk. So you'll see here, certain cities have green colors and yellow and red. So a green city would be a low risk, and then yellow is moderate risk, and then red is high risk. So before I get into the town's results, I thought it might be helpful to quickly review what risk means in the context of fiscal health. So in this context, the risk is the potential for fiscal distress, which can be caused by certain indicators such as low general fund reserves, the inability for a city to meet debt service obligations, low revenue trends, or increasingly high pension costs. High-risk cities, which are the red cities, would have a combination of those indicators at high levels. The state auditor took a combination of 10 indicators which are listed in the agenda report, and created a point system. So the points were applied and then created the ability to rank California cities by their potential fiscal risk. So you'll see here at the top left, you can do a Find My City, which is the easiest way to find Yucca Valley because you just go all the way to the bottom. For the, move that over. So you can scroll to the bottom and find Yucca Valley because we're at the bottom of the alphabet. And then on your map, it will take you, as it loads, right to where Yucca Valley is, which is helpful because then you can kind of see these surrounding areas. So you can click on the city. Again, bear with me as the site loads. It has a lot of data on it. And you can see here is Yucca Valley and its little spot here in the desert. And we have what is considered a low ranking, and we're pretty proud to say that the County of Yucca Valley ranked number 427, which is out of 453. So basically the town was 27th out of those 453 cities in fiscal health. The total score that the town received was 93.56 out of 100 points.
Wow.
So fairly well. So if you just click on the town's name there, you can scroll down and see some more information on kind of how the data was put together, what those indicators were that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So you'll see here there's some green areas which scored really well, some moderate areas for revenue trends and pension funding, and then you'll see here at the bottom right, OPEB funding was the only area that was considered high risk. So if you click here, you can see what the reasoning was for that. So the OPEB funded ratio at the time of this report, which was for fiscal year 18-19, the OPEB funded ratio that was reported was 44%. And I just wanted to give you some context for this year. And that was right here, we did an updated OPEB actuarial report, which is required every year for our comprehensive annual financial report. And I just wanted to make note here on this report that as of the 2020 fiscal year, the pension or the OPEB trust and therefore the OPEB costs were 47% funded, so that did increase. And then this note here, which kind of puts the whole thing into context for 2020, is that per our actuarials, the funded status of the plan is considered how much you have in the OPEB trust versus how much is owed for those other post-employment benefit costs. So when compared to the actual assets and the accrued liability, current assets are 72% of liabilities. So you could say overall OPEB costs in 2020 are considered about 72% funded. So those costs you'll see in those graphs below, they kind of pan out over the years. So that ratio will change. But in general, I think you'll see that high risk section turn to moderate and then green at some point.
Very good.
So that's Yucca Valley in context to all of the cities in California, which I think is something to be very proud of. And then last but not least, I just wanted to go over the COVID-19 section of the website. This is new for this year since the last time you took a look. They basically looked at the consequences of COVID-19 and wanted to see how revenues were impacted for these different cities that were reporting and give estimates. So for city revenues, the areas that they were considered to be hit hardest by the pandemic, which I would say ended up being the most accurate, was the hotel taxes, obviously, because people couldn't travel as usual. So they estimated a 66% loss in hotel taxes for cities statewide. And then second was sales and use tax, and then third was business license taxes. So you can scroll through this page and they have a lot of information. You can actually download all of the data, which is a really, really big spreadsheet. So on that spreadsheet, the town of Yucca Valley, they estimated about a 2% loss, mainly in sales tax, and which was about what we estimated when we did 2021. So I would say that they were fairly accurate in their estimates, and mid-year coming up soon, you'll see that sales tax is doing somewhat better than the auditor's office and ourselves were expecting. So these were the areas that were going to have the highest hit for hotel tax. It's pretty interesting. And then you'll see here, out of all of the cities, Indian Wells was considered the most impacted because they were going to lose up to 50% of their general fund revenues. So like I said, in regards to COVID, the town was considered slightly slow or fairly low risk compared to everyone else. They didn't make this list here, which is the cities that have the highest budget reserves. But these cities have pretty high budgets, so that would be why. So I'm available for any comments or questions, and I will stop my screen share now if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. All right, let me know if you have any questions.
We'll go to the public. Is there anybody in the public wishing to speak on this report? All right, we'll bring it back to the council and staff. Jordan, that's great, wonderful news. Very proud to be in the accounting department and see that your town is doing well with the monies that and the decisions that council makes as well as staff. So those are really, really impressive numbers. I noticed that you didn't give it away by the first slide by showing the worst cities on that slide instead of the best. So I see you were holding your cards close to you until you could give us the good news where we rank. So that's wonderful news. Any council members needing to make a comment? Go right ahead. Councilmember Dennison.
I'd just like to say thank you, Jordan, for the presentation. It was very clear, and obviously a lot of work has paid off with the council and staff over the last few years. And one thing I've always talked about was our post-employment benefits, and seeing those numbers shifting in the right direction for us is just fantastic. So thank you for that. And wow, we don't have much further to move to get to be the best in the state. So I think we can do it.
Keep going.
Thank you.
Be competitive.
Very good. All right, I believe we're going to go ahead if you have any
Well, I
other
just
comments.
want to say thank you, Jordan. It's excellent. It's always good to hear such positive news on the financial side. It speaks well of all of our staff and our employees and the cooperation that we have as a unit, working together, thinking into the future and protecting ourselves with prudent management of the monies. And looks like we're in good shape. Let's keep it that way. Let's not go crazy.
Yep, very good. So I believe we're going to receive and file this, no need for a motion and so forth. Okay, so Jordan, thank you again. You did an excellent job going through that, and whenever you're dealing with electronics, things are bound to go wrong, and it didn't go wrong at all this time. So good job on that PowerPoint presentation, and thank you again for making it clear, and thank you again for watching all that money and making sure it gets to where it's supposed to go. So appreciate that. We'll move on to item number 8, electronic signature policy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This next item before you is for the adoption of an electronic signature policy, allowing the use of electronic signatures for certain documents such as contracts and applications. If used in compliance with the California Government Code, the use of electronic signatures are as legally binding as physical signatures. Many public agencies are moving towards electronic signatures for the convenience, the reduction of paper generation, and the significant decrease in time and cost associated with transmitting and approving the documents. The use of electronic signatures also creates an audit trail during the signing process. This is a mouthful. The United States Electronic Signatures in Global and National Commerce Act and the California Uniform Electronic Transaction Act require 4 elements for an electronic signature to be recognized as valid. 1, the intent to sign between 2 or more parties, which is similar to handwritten signatures. 2, the consent to do business electronically. 3, the e-signature system must include a textual or graphic statement that the document was signed electronically, and the e-signature system must include the document signed electronically must be able to retain the e-signature within the document for the entire retention period. It is staff's intention to use DocuSign as the format for electronic signatures, which meets the compliance standards of the law. So the recommendation before you is to adopt the resolution establishing an electronic signature policy. This concludes the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions following public comment.
Thank you. Anybody in the public wishing to speak on electronic signature policy? right, hearing and seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. I just want to make it very clear that I am a major stockholder of DocuSign, maybe 10 shares. So I hope that's no conflict of interest. Anyway, electronic signatures are the way of conducting businesses all the time. So it just stands to, would that be used like in our planning department across the board or with certain particular departments?
Yes, our professional service agreements that when we hire consultants or somebody, a lot of our contracts with our contractors on our building, it would not be something that we could use that we need the wet signature for a notary. So we'd have to choose whether we need a notary on a contract or we can use it for electronic signatures. It would not be part of our ordinances or resolutions because it needs two parties involved with consent to do this electronically. So with those documents, it's just one-sided because it's the town's document. So does that answer anything?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. It's pretty straightforward policy. Any other discussion? If not, I'll need a motion to approve the electronic signature policy.
Mayor, I'll move that the town council adopts a resolution establishing an electronic signature policy.
And I will second.
We have a motion, a second.
Councilmember Lombardo, did you have an answer or a question?
I
Okay.
just wanted to know if it was 10% or 10 shares that you were saying you have. DocuSign. No.
10 shares, not 10%.
So roll call. Councilmembers Abel.
Yes.
I'm doing this backwards. Councilmembers Dennison,
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
and Schooler.
Yes.
Very good. We'll move on to item number 9, department report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're going to bring up a presentation on your strategic plan status review for the mid-cycle period. You'll recollect that your existing approved strategic plan covers fiscal years 2020 through 2022, and so this is a good time to take a look back and see what's been done, where we're at, what some of the impacts have been of COVID. We'll talk about that, as well as where we're headed. And then if there's other thoughts or questions as you go through this that you have, feel free to bring those up at any time. You've seen this graphic in both your strategic planning as well as your budgeting documents because it is integrated. And so your strategic planning is kind of the first step before you move into your budget process so that your budget process is implementing what plans you have and what plans you want to do. And then as you go through that process, it's iterative and you monitor your results, adjust as needed, which you'll have in your March mid-year budget review. For the upcoming year, we'll make some changes there. And then in fall of this year, you'll begin your next 2-year strategic planning cycle. So just a refresher on how that process works. Your approved final strategic plan is based with the theme of continuing forward, and then it's subdivided into 3 different areas. One that deals with the community, one that deals with the organization itself, and then one that deals with the broader town. And so specifically, it's broken up like this. You can see town, community, and then region. So town, if you can think of that as really the initiatives that are more internal to how we function. And then community is how do we function externally to your residents, to your constituents, to your businesses. And then lastly, as a region across the basin and the broader area, how do we integrate and bring value to those areas through specific plans and objectives that the council has approved. So we're going to start with town, we're going to move to community, and then region. In your agenda packet, you have all of the entire plan color-coded by where we're at in different progress. So these highlights do not cover all of those. We wouldn't want to put you through that tonight, but just highlighting certain ones that we have either finished or that the council has talked about recently that we wanted to update you on. So here's a list of the ones that have been completed already in your first year. Probably the most significant one was a long-standing one, which was developing an updated solid waste franchise agreement. You'll remember that exercise that we did in the summer. And then the equitable solid waste rate mechanisms that were in place as part of that agreement. Had some conversations about visioning in Old Town area. And then through COVID, actually, and you'll see this, I think, in another slide, some of our IT stuff has actually been accelerated. And so the idea of bringing a broadband, for example, to your animal shelter campus has been something that we've been trying to move forward for many, many years. But just cost benefit wasn't there. And then with CARES Act funding being made available and being required on certain types of funding, it opened up an opportunity for us to move in that direction. And so that project will be underway. Again, we talked about the Old Town event space planning. I think as we begin to develop more specific planning documents on what that will look like, and then hopefully be able to bring that back in a timely manner to the council. I don't know if I had on here the first one there, the updated town's primary website platform. Obviously, we've made that change in the past year. As part of that, moving forward is the expanded online payment platforms. So staff is currently working on that for integration into our new recreation software platform. That's going to be launched in April. To make it easier for our residents when they're able to come back and participate in recreation programming, to be able to do that in a way that is intuitive and straightforward. As you know, your franchise hauler has a new facility underway over on Indio Avenue, the east end of town there. And so as that facility begins to be fully developed, probably operational either late this year, hopefully late this year, maybe even early in fall, we may be able to have some additional recycling drop-off opportunities, things that the community has desired for a while. And I think I've had the opportunity to walk you through our empty library building, and we're beginning that project obviously in earnest to look at how do we effectively bring in all of our services for the community under one roof in the most effective manner. So those are some of the bigger ones that we have moving forward that affect the town itself. Moving to the community, these are things that you're well aware of. Our Prop 68 allocated grant is moving forward through CEQA, will be before the council shortly. And then we're underway with the competitive grant applications, again, to try and leverage additional funding there for our recreational hub area. Town signage reviews, murals specifically, that'll be before the council shortly. We've done the short-term vacation rental review. As part of that, we may have some specific recommendations that come back before the council at an operational level or a staff level that I think would be very meaningful and impactful in addressing many of the comments that you heard at your last review. So a list of some of the other items that the council has highlighted on the community sector. And lastly, on the region, each time that you go through something as an organization, it highlights different aspects of where you have strengths, where you have weaknesses. And I think earlier this week, Councilmember Lombardo and I were talking a little bit about retail operations and what COVID highlighted, and you'll see this when the mid-year budget review comes to you in March, is really what that has done for this community. And some of it's good, some of it's bad, in that many of our smaller operators have suffered, and they've suffered tremendously through the COVID shutdown. Our larger retailers have thrived, and I think that speaks to the wisdom of this council as well as prior councils in establishing the town to be business-friendly for all size businesses, including your larger businesses, and focusing on being the economic hub for the entire Morongo Basin. And so we've seen that come to full benefit during this COVID pandemic. Continue to have conversations with the new fire chief, Chief Muncy, as well as your Assistant Chief Tuttle in discussing the most effective EMT services and facilities for this community. They're aware that of what the needs are. They're aware of Station 41 and its condition. We'll keep pounding that message at the
fire station.
at the encouragement or direction of the council as much as we can, for sure. And then, as you know, you'll hear even a little bit later in staff comments some of the updates on your transportation projects that continue to move forward across the entire town. Why do we do strategic planning? It's not real exciting stuff, but it does provide consistency from year to year. It gives staff direction on what way we're moving, and it identifies priorities through your budget process. And then ideally, it transcends staff and council transitions as people come and go, as council members come and go. If that emphasis is placed on that longer-term focus, then the organization can keep on delivering irrespective of who's in what seat. Let me go back to this slide here. I wanted to speak just for a couple of minutes on, as you go through the document, you know, I went through it, there's a lot of items that we have not started yet, items that we've had to put on hold because of COVID, and then items that are taking longer than maybe they would in a regular planning period. And what we feel, or what I've seen anyways, is that there are a number of impacts that we're having from COVID, and it's across not only our organization, but it's across organizations that we deal with on a regular basis. So things that would normally take 2 weeks or 4 weeks are taking 4 weeks or 8 weeks. Other agencies, for example, Caltrans, if we're dealing with them, they take forever on a good day. Now it's twice that to get back responses and be able to move things forward. And then you have the practical issues where we've had staff impacts from COVID, people that have been out for weeks at a time on COVID protocol. This week we had a couple of our staff members return, had to reintroduce them to, hey, are you new here? You know, we haven't seen you for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And so that has an impact. There's no question about it. When we have split shifts, that has an impact on our ability to deliver. And so we're trying to work through that. We're trying to keep staff motivated, but at some point it begins to take a toll. And so there's no denying that. There's no question about it. But the employee's health has to be paramount. And so whether that's protecting through split shifts, protecting through work at home, allowing employees or requiring employees to stay home if they're even potentially infectious, that's what we need to do. And some of the downside to that is things take a little bit longer. So just wanted to highlight that as our impact. So with that, unless there's other questions that the council will have, the direction or the recommendation is to receive and file the update. Again, all of the detail for all of your action plans and objectives are in your agenda packet, and you're certainly welcome to provide input as you desire this evening.
Open it up to public comment. All right, we'll bring it back to the council. Any questions for staff?
I was impressed with the number of things that got completed. You're saying that it seemed like not much, or that you maybe would have been at a more advanced stage on some of the projects, but seems like we got a lot of important things done. And one thing that's happened through COVID is it's forced us to become more reliant on our technology. And thank goodness we started that process a little bit before this happened, because we would have been lost without the advancements that we've made in the last couple of years on our IT system and the electronic capability that we have now in the council room. I think it's important that we push forward with those, but I think you've done tremendous things, and I'm very proud to be part of this. You've done a great job. You have a lot to be thankful.
Yeah, and I would just again highlight, I mean, we have high expectations. We have high expectations of the council. The council has high expectations of your management team, of the staff throughout the organization. And top to bottom, the organization is doing the very best that they can, and they do a great job day in and day out. And so it's not at all meant to cast any type of dispersion on that. Rather, it's just to highlight that, hey, there are practical impacts from COVID, and it's impacting our ability sometimes to get things done as fast as we would like.
Okay. Very happy. Thank you.
Well, we definitely do appreciate the update, and as stated, there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of things were accomplished as well. It'll be nice to see if, or how we'll be able to put together using this facility in a better way and having all services in one location, because I know that can be confusing to people where they go to get the services they need. So it also probably will help with collaboration between staff and departments, and it'll be a good thing. So if there aren't any other comments or questions, we'll receive and file this report. Thank you. And move on to item number 10.
Brown Act.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. With the new year comes many new laws. As you know, the legislature has adopted many new laws, and the governor has signed them. I would like to highlight one of those new laws this evening, which deals with the Brown Act and social media. So the Brown Act was written in 1953. When it was written, the legislature could not have imagined social media. So this is the first time that the legislature has tried to blend or combine the Brown Act and social media. If I could boil it down kind of into one statement, here's what this new law says. There are some new rules that prohibit one council member from commenting on or liking or sharing a social media post of another council member regarding town issues or city issues. It does not just apply to council members, though. The term that is used in the law is a legislative body. So it applies to the council, applies to planning commissions, also applies here locally to the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Commission, but only within those legislative bodies. If I could illustrate that kind of visually, the top one there, under the normal and usual Brown Act rules that we're all used to, Councilmember A can talk to Councilmember B about town business, and that's fine. And that doesn't violate the Brown Act to just have two council members of a 5-member council talking about an item of town business. That's fine. That same conversation between Councilmember A and Councilmember B can't happen over social media now under this new law. So what is allowed in a verbal or a face-to-face conversation, or even an email, is now not allowed if it's done over one of the various social media platforms. So in that sense, this modification to the Brown Act is a little more strict than what we are used to under some of the normal rules.
Can you explain their thinking on that? Doesn't it seem to make it more murky? Wouldn't it be better for the public to see what one council member is saying to the other?
Well, I don't know if I can explain the reasoning, but it, and I will get into this a little bit more. The council members can still engage with members of the public on social media. It's just two council members can't comment or react to each other on social media.
You can send it to another council member, but you can't comment on another's.
Can't like it, can't use a thumbs up, can't do any reaction. I think maybe
No
is the
reaction.
best word, no reaction
Okay.
on social media.
Got it.
And so the term used in the law is an internet-based social media platform. That means just the normal social media platforms that we're used to, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those. It's an online service that's open and accessible to the public. Even would include chat rooms, comment sections in blogs, comment sections in online media would qualify under this definition as well. So here's what you can do, and kind of as I mentioned, here's what you can do on social media. Council members can engage with members of the public on social media. That's fine. Here's what you can't do. Council members cannot comment, like, share a social media post of another council member. And that's really the key here. It's of another council member on the same legislative body regarding town issues.
Question.
Sure.
So on a blog, having not maybe read the history in the past, and you comment something like, or you wouldn't be able to comment and say, I agree with Councilmember Droz that this is a bad thing, because I would not be able to do that.
You would not be able to do
So you
that.
can't mention another councilman, but what happens if you write out that, in effect, I agree with, I agree with this policy, but Councilmember Droz has agreed, in a conversation 3 days before and I didn't see it. Am I still guilty of violation of Brown Act?
That would likely be a violation, yes.
So it's better not to comment.
Better not to comment.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, better not to go close to that line. Yeah. And it kind of puts the burden on members of the legislative body to read prior comments. And maybe those comments are
You can't read months of conversation.
understood.
It's better not to comment. That's often my case.
This the law uses the phrase digital icons. So it's even if you just thumbs up or use some emoji, that counts.
An emoji with sunglasses? Come on.
That is
really?
enough. The use of digital
Up or down?
icons is now written into the Brown Act.
I never
So
knew what
I've gone through, I've created a series of just examples here that I want to go through briefly. I've intentionally come up with what are very clear examples of what you can do and what you can't do. There are probably lots of examples that push the line, that get close to the line, that get into the fuzzy areas of this law. But I'm trying to stay far away from those areas and just use clear examples to kind of help illustrate how this works in real life. The second thing I should mention too is I'm not a social media expert. There are likely many ways that, social media can be used that could violate this law that I'm simply not aware of. So here are my examples. And we'll start with a couple of what you can do. So after a council agenda is posted on a city social media platform, members of the public ask questions in the comments and tag council members for a response. One council member responds to members of the public. That would be fine because it's a council member on social media engaging with the public.
Right.
Not a problem. And often cities, towns have their own social media platforms. And so a city or town social media platform is not another council member. And really, that's the key takeaway. It's got to be another council member.
Okay.
Here's another example of what you can do. Council member comments on a city project posted on that city's social media account. Again, a city will have a platform to announce events or to announce projects or services, and the town's social media platform is not another council member's. Final example, what you can do, a council member likes a post by another council member regarding the Dodgers. So that's not a matter of town business, and so that's still okay. Or some sort of a like or a comment on maybe a vacation or just a family issue that one council member posts and another council member wants to comment on that. That is fine as well. Couple examples of what you can't do. This kind of builds on a previous example. So council agendas posted on a city's social media platforms. Members of the public ask questions. Tag council members for a response. One council member responds to members of the public. Up to that point, we're okay. Worried about appearing non-responsive, another council member also responds on the same issues. Now that would violate this because you have two council members on a social media platform reacting to each other on a matter of city or town business.
You could react to another item of business, but not the same one that the previous council member talked about.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now you've got two on that same item on social media.
And it would be the second one guilty of the violation?
Right.
Okay.
Correct. Another example of what you can't do, a council member posts about an upcoming agenda item, which is then commented on, given a thumbs up by another council member. So even a thumbs up qualifies under this law as the digital icon that would violate the Brown Act now. Last example, council member posts about a city issue. Another council member is one of 78 people who likes the post. This maybe goes to your example from earlier. Even if there are 78 people in between and now you have a council member who's liked that you're in that string or that chain, I think that would violate this provision of the Brown Act. So even if there are many comments in between, and even if it's just a like, that would qualify under this new law. So those are just some clear examples of what you can and can't do. That would conclude this short presentation. If questions come up, again, I think as this law evolves and as more situations arise, I'm happy to talk with any of you individually as these matters come up, or happy to answer any questions now if you have any.
Very good, thank you. Any members of the public wishing to speak on AB 992, the update, the Brown Act, and social media? All right, we'll bring it back to the council. Yeah, I was sort of bewildered as well, because I believed the whole idea of the Brown Act was not to do things behind closed doors in secret and talk to people without the public knowing. You're out on the public forum where the public can clearly see the conversation, is not anything in secret. So I think they probably overstepped their bounds a little bit on this, but they're on the side of caution, so we'll have to adhere to that, of course. But again, it was all made out in public, so I thought that wouldn't be a problem. I guess I can give you a thumbs up for the presentation, though, here in public, so.
That's right. We're at a public meeting.
Yeah, but that is of also all the Brown Act updates, that's probably the most interesting one we've gotten, because it's such a trendy thing, a very current thing. Councilmember Drodes.
I have a quick question. The Brown Act, does that apply to state legislators also?
No, they have a separate open meeting law that is different from the open meeting law that applies to members of a local legislative body.
Okay, because I always wonder why they could debate things out in public and, local agencies can't. Thank you.
Yeah, and they don't take into account of a board of 15 people versus a board of 5.
They do.
They
This
do.
would apply to a board of 15 people.
But there's usually, before it's a Brown Act violation, a certain number, like the majority. If I went to one
Correct.
particular council member out of 5 and talked, then that's not a violation. But if I went to 3 out of 5, that would be a violation.
Right.
If I'm on a board of 15, I can speak to more people than that. But
Right.
do they take that into consideration?
Not for this
Not for social media.
Right.
Very strict.
Very strict.
That's tough.
Yeah, and again, it'd be hard to educate the public too, because now the council members aren't being responsive on social media, and now they're not interacting, as far as only one of them maybe responds, and then nobody wants to respond because you might not know out of the 78 likes if somebody from the council was on there.
If somebody liked it and then you responded with written words,
Well, that's
you'd be a violation, right?
You'd have to say who was the first one who liked it, the second one would be the violation.
Wow.
I guess you could say, I don't want to risk violating AB 992.
I'm not going to talk to the public.
Email me.
No, email me. Oh, there you go.
Well, thank you very much. That helps keep us out of hot water, and I appreciate that. And that's what council does, is legal counsel keeps us out of hot water, makes us go on the straight and narrow. Appreciate that. So again, this is a receive and file. If there are no other comments or questions, anybody on the council with a future agenda item? All right, we'll move on to public comments. The town council takes this time to consider your comments on items of concern which are not part of the agenda. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to us tonight on anything not on the agenda? All right, seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to staff reports and comments.
Thank you, Mayor. As you can see, last time, I think it was Deborah on that side, and everybody else was gone on COVID protocol. We have some people that are out sick, and so Armando's by himself today. So turn it over to Armando. You have any comments tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. We have 2 projects going on in the town, Yucca Trail and Palomar. In Yucca Trail, we're going to see grading and paving activities within the next 2 weeks, and expecting striping to be performed the third week of February, and probably the conclusion by the end of February. Palomari intersection with Yucca Trail, the intersection striping is scheduled to be done this week, and next week the contractor will have all the traffic signal controllers and lights installed. So we are expecting to see both projects to be finished by the end of February. So in March, probably, we will have a presentation that we are not going to put in social media, so there's no problems with that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple items. As you'll recall, Council had awarded a contract to PlaceWorks for our mandated update of our general plan housing and safety elements. Our kickoff meeting is next week, and that's scheduled to be completed in October of this year. We're talking about transportation this evening. Staff has been working with the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority staff on their 10-year delivery plan. There's approximately $75 million for the three entities in the Morongo Basin, the county, the town, and the city of 29 Palms. And we're in the process of providing priorities to SBCTA for the allocation of those funds. That 10-year plan is reviewed every 2 years and updated every 2 years at SBCTA, so there's always ample opportunities for amendments. Native plant permits have been active as the sewer project continues to move forward. Many of those applications are exempt, not touching any regulated desert native plants, and there are a few that do go to Planning Commission for Mojave yuccas and California junipers being the primary ones. We believe from communication that we've had that we will have our first applications for Joshua Tree take permits, Western Joshua Tree take permits in the very near future. They have not been submitted yet. We are expecting them, though, in the near future. On the private land development side, Aldi is continuing to move forward with their plans for the Warren Vista Center or the Rite Aid Center. Dutch Brothers Coffee is continuing to move forward in their negotiations with the property owner of Stater Brothers West, going on the former Burger King site. Habit Burger has continued to work with staff over the past 2 weeks, moving rather quickly with their development plans and applications. I think most of the questions were resolved this week, and Domino's and Jersey Mike's is revising their architecture to go back to the Planning Commission. Currently, that public hearing scheduled for the end of this month, into February. Then finally, the Prescott Center, which the council will recall, we had somewhat side conversations related to a potential traffic signal at Prescott and Highway 62. That project has been withdrawn and is no longer active. It's staff's understanding that due to actions or inactions with Caltrans in the review of transportation documents, that they decided to no longer move forward with that project. And that concludes staff comments this evening for me.
Thank you, Shane. I know we have the captain and lieutenant joining us today remotely, so at this point I'd see if Captain Niles has anything that he would like to update us on.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I would just like to take a minute to encourage all of my fellow residents to lock their vehicles and maybe take an extra look before they secure their vehicle at their home to make sure all their valuables are removed. Unfortunately, over the last 2 weeks, there has been a significant increase in theft from unlocked vehicles within the community during the late evening hours. Deputies are still working very diligently to try to find those responsible, but if residents could help us in a couple ways, like I said, protect your property, lock your doors, but please, if somebody sees something, or heaven forbid they are victimized, it's really important for us to hear about those incidents. We know a lot of times, those calls unfortunately don't come to the sheriff's department because sometimes it's inconvenient communicating with us when you discover your property had been broken into and you're on your way to work. We'll work around everyone's schedules, but it's important for us to know when people are victimized. It helps us build a timeline and some locations that might help us apprehend those responsible. So I will conclude with that. We're still working really hard to find those responsible, but please protect your property. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Captain. Assistant Chief Tuttle, I think you're joining us today as well. Any update for us?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, business pretty much as usual right now. We have had a couple of significant fires in Yucca Valley in the last month. There's no connection. The first thing we look at when we get a couple of fires in a row, if there's any connections, and there doesn't appear to be any connections. Both fires are still under investigation. As far as just routine calls around the town, pretty standard. Our call volume is pretty flat right now, pretty normal. The COVID incidents seem to be decreasing a little bit. I can tell you that our COVID incidents among employees has definitely gone down. So that's good news. And then lastly, I just want to share with the public, our burn permit process is now an online process. So if anybody needs a burn permit, the restrictions for burning were recently lifted. So for those folks who do burn weeds, brush, tree trimmings, burning is allowed again now. And people can go on our website, go to the quick links and click on burn permits to get an online burn permit. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief Tuttle. Appreciate you and the captain, lieutenant for joining us remotely. It'd be nice when everyone can join back in person. Last thing I just wanted to share with the council is that we continue to field a number of calls at Town Hall regarding the availability or inavailability of vaccines, as the case may be. So just wanted to throw up here the site to go to. It's spcovid19.com. This is the county site. As you'll recollect, vaccinations are distributed through the federal government to the state government, then to the county Department of Public Health, generally speaking, and then there's some offsets to that, which may go directly to hospitals, which may go directly to nursing homes or providers that are vaccinating nursing homes. And so, but for the general public, it's going to come through the county's Department of Public Health. So they have stood up a number of their appointment processes, how that's going to happen. They have a couple of, they have some very helpful information, but probably more importantly is the ability to set an appointment when they have their mass vaccination events. As an example, I believe they had one today at the Auto Club Speedway. They had 3,500 vaccines available. When that opened up for appointments, those were filled in less than 20 minutes. So still very, very high demand. It's going to take some time for that supply to catch up and be widely available. Last thing I would add to that is we have heard from the county that there is some work being undertaken right now with the Department of Adult and Aging Services that may be able to stand up a clinic here in town at some point when those supplies are increased. And so they're looking at a number of different facilities, including our senior center as a potential vaccination site. As that information is fully developed, we'll obviously keep the public and the council apprised of that. But I wouldn't expect that to occur probably till March at the earliest at the rate that we're going right now, and that might even be a little bit early too. So For folks, that's the best way to get information. This information is updated daily. You can also link into the social media platforms for the county, their Facebook page, and some other platforms that they update even hourly throughout the day as this changes continuously. That concludes staff comments. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to mayor and council member reports and comments. Councilmember Dennison.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to go ahead and kind of echo again what Captain Niles had spoke about. A lot of the thefts that he mentioned today have happened in our community. A great portion of them have happened in my district. So the public is requested again just to keep your eyes open, be safe, watch out for each other, watch out for your neighbors, and watch out for yourself and your family. It's very important. Our police department appreciates any help they can get to help solve these crimes, and it's come quickly, and hopefully we can resolve it quickly too. Also, I want to thank the community for their patience. As you heard from our Public Works Director, the Yucca Trail project and Palomar project that are going on is a big project for our community. But I think the contractors have done a great job of allowing traffic to get through, getting people to where they need to be. If you can, avoid the area, but I know that a lot of folks live in that area, and I've seen great cooperation with the drivers there, taking their time, being safe around the workers, and I personally appreciate it, and I know that our crews out there do too, and staff. So that's all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Councilmember Rhodes.
I want to say I think there's a lot of good news tonight. I think the high-risk dashboard, Jordan's report was really pretty incredible. It makes me proud to be part of this organization, a small part. And the strategic plan review was good. I think the town is keeping up on everything as well as they can. And the same thing, I'm proud to be associated with a town that can do that. And good news with the Yucca Trail project and all the street projects. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for all your hard work. And this Sunday is the Super Bowl, so whether you're watching for sports or for the commercials, enjoy your Super Bowl. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Councilmember Lombardo.
Pretty much echo the same things. Great information, happy news on the financial side for Yucca Valley. It speaks well for the future. It's nice to have those projects wrapped up. You can't hardly avoid them because if you go anywhere in town, you're going to use Palomar or Yucca Trail one time or another, and at least on my side of the districts. But it's nice. I think it'll be a great improvement when they're completed, and thank you for getting those done on time and keeping a good eye on it. Excited to see what the continuation of our strategic planning. There's some fun things that can happen in Old Town that we need to discuss more, and I think it's on the plan to do so. I look forward to seeing more of that fleshed out. I think we've come a long way in Yucca Valley, and there's a lot more to happen here. I think we should be competitive and go for #1 town with the standing and the financial situation. We're number 27 now. We got just a few more to knock off, and we're up to #1. So let's keep going.
I love it. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Schooler.
Well, I echo those comments and appreciate the information about the financial condition of the town and the projects and priorities on the strategic plan. I learned a lot tonight about the MBTA and the constraints and challenges that they're up against, and I think that'll be interesting to follow how they recover from this COVID situation that requires people to keep their distance. So it's tough to keep it clean, I'm sure, when people are traveling on the bus. So learned a lot. Can't wait to go home and Google battery electric buses because I just can't imagine that being
Economical.
yeah, it's something very interesting to follow up on. Also, I got in my town mailbox, and I assume they're available to the public, these park planning kits for engaging the community and everybody to help design a park, town of Yucca Valley. So are those available to everybody wherever?
They are, and that reminded me that I missed Sue online this evening. So Sue, if you're there, you want to jump in and just let the council members know where, I think we distributed all of the park planners to the council members, and they are available to the public as well. Sue?
Yes, so for the month of February, we are continuing with our public input for our Prop 68 grant applications. There are 2 more Park Talk outreach events in February. The first one is on the 10th, and that's a Facebook Live event at 1 p.m. And we'd particularly like to hear from seniors on that Facebook Live event. We also have a Healthy Hearts Fun Run after party on Saturday, the 20th at 10 a.m. So registration is now open for this virtual 5K and 2K run, 5K run and 2K walk. So you can do this activity wherever you want, whenever you want, and then join us for the after party on Saturday the 20th, where we'll be giving away prizes and talking about parks. And also, in regards to the Park Planner Kit, we encourage everyone to take a break from those screens and design their own perfect park and submit your design to the rec department, and you'll receive a town swag bag. So all of that info, and with a single click, you can request the Park Planner Kit, and we'll send it right out to you. All of that is on our website, yucca-valley.org, and click on the recreation button, and all of the outreach information is there.
Thank you,
So we
Sue.
encourage everyone to participate and visit us on our website where it has all the details.
Thank you, Sue, very much. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem
Sure.
Schooler. All right, well, I want to thank Mark again from the Morongo Basin Transit Authority for the presentation tonight. It's a pleasure to be part of that board and to work with him, along with Councilmember Drodes and members from the county, the public is also, and also 2 members from the city of 29 Palms. So it was nice to have Mark here tonight. Also appreciate the other presentations we had from social media and legal counsels, and also the great financial budget report update as well. So that was fantastic. My pleasure to have been selected as the chairman of the Mojave Desert Air Quality Management Board, which can be a little bit intimidating because there's 3 county supervisors on that, so I don't want to mess up the meetings. So it's a real honor and pleasure to be selected as the chairman, and I look forward to that. And just wanted to invite the public, if you're not a council member, to like me and watch me on Facebook on my Rural Able Town Council
Don't
page.
comment.
Other than that, we are going to adjourn tonight's meeting, and we're going to be moving into our successor agency meeting after this. Our next regular meeting for the town of Yucca Valley, the town council, will be on Tuesday, February 16th at 6 o'clock in the Yucca Valley Community Center. Join us virtually, and also we invite you to come here in person. With that, we'll go ahead and end tonight's meeting, and then we'll reopen in the successor agency meeting. Thank you.
Nah, just get it over.
All right. Seeing there's no need for a break, we're going to go ahead and open up our successor agency meeting of Tuesday, February 2nd. It is at 7:38, and we'll have a roll call, please.
Agency members Dennison.
Here.
Droz.
Here.
Lombardo.
Here.
Schooler.
Here.
And Chair Abel.
Here. Approval of agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Dennison seconded. Roll call.
Agency members Dennison.
Yes.
Droz.
Yes.
Lombardo.
Yes.
Schooler.
Yes.
And Chair Abel.
Yes. All right, consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are routine matters. Is there anybody in the public who would like to make a comment or have a question about the consent agenda? All right, is there any item to be pulled?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Approval, Schooler with the second.
Agency members Dennison.
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo.
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Chair Abel.
Yes. Now we move to our department reports, item number 3.
Hello again, agency members now. I will be going over the fiscal year 21-22 ROCs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again so you can see just a really brief PowerPoint presentation for you. I'll go ahead and get that opened up here. So as you are familiar with, the successor agency has the recognized obligation payment schedule. The most recent one that was prepared and presented to the Countywide Oversight Board was for fiscal year 2021 through 2022. So the total requested items on the annual ROPS was the debt service payments, which are from the 2018 bond refinance. And then the second was the administrative allowance. You'll see that the total for this year was $169,000, which is less than the maximum admin allowance amount of $250,000. I believe town manager will have some comments on that at the end of the presentation for you. So going forward, just a brief overview. The original bond payments were refinanced, or debt service was refinanced in 2018. Year-to-date savings from that refinance is a total of $587,847. So it's a significant savings amount year-to-date. The administration going forward for the remainder of this year, and then in fiscal year 21-22 is the annual ROP submission, the annual prior period adjustment reporting to the county, the biannual debt service payment, any Department of Finance communication and reporting as they request backup for everything that we pay and submit for receipt of, and then the annual debt disclosure and debt transparency report, and then the successor agency items are also included in the annual audit and comprehensive annual financial reporting. So the recommended action before you is that the agency approves the resolution adopting the annual recognized obligation payment schedule for the period from July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2022, and then to ratify the ROPS that was delivered to the San Bernardino County Auditor Controller and the State Controller and the State Department of Finance, which was due yesterday, February 1st, 2021. So town staff was able to submit that on time and request your ratification tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Curtis to see if he has any comments or if you all have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. I guess the downside to this meeting is normally it's short and we'd be done now, but we're going to make you suffer through just a little bit of what happens behind the scenes with this. And we're doing this for a couple of reasons. One is the administrative allowance direction from the prior successor agency was to ensure that town staff sought the maximum that was allowable through legislation of redevelopment dissolution. And that was the guidance that was given. And so we've done that ever since 2011, and we've received that full amount until this year. In 2018, you'll recollect that the oversight board function changed from a locally designated board to a countywide oversight board. And so now that agency or that body is responsible for review and approval. We presented to them in December our normal ROPS process, which included the debt service payments as well as the administrative allowance request of $250,000. And after some back and forth, there was some pretty clear direction given to us. And so I'm going to bring up, have Jessica bring up, do we have that video queued up? Okay. So let me, we're going to start, yeah, right there, but before you start it, let me just set the context here. So we've presented our redevelopment agency item to the oversight board. They discussed it. They were not in agreement with us seeking $250,000. The item was requested to have a motion, and no motion was made. And so then from that, additional conversation happened. So I'm just going to play you just the last portion of this, if you can bear with us, and you can see kind of what happens behind the scenes.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Town Manager. Are there any additional questions or comments from the board members?
Yeah, and the reason, thank you. To the gentleman that did respond, our town manager for the town of Yucca Valley. The reason why I asked the question is that, as I'm looking at the indirect cost, they constitute about roughly just over 60% of the entire administrative budget, and they're for indirect costs, whereas the direct costs are far less than that, probably about 35% roughly. And so it's concerning for me to see that, these services, just based on a formula, I believe that's done within your town's, kind of your processes and procedures, amounts to the fact that the majority of the costs that are spent are for things that aren't even really received by the RDA and the or the successor agency and its activities. So that would definitely be a point that I would hope if you guys can go back and take a look at to see if there's less of a burden by way of indirect costs, just simply because it's one of your special revenue funds. I can see that there's some flexibility based on indirect cost percentages that you have applied by way of the general services being the largest portion. So similarly, I would think that the activities of these other areas, the impact that it has on human resources and facility maintenance, as well as information technology, might also be looked at in the same vein. That's all I have, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you for that. Anything from any of the other board members? Yeah,
Honorable Chair, if I might to add just one additional comment or clarification.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition. We would appreciate that guidance even more specifically, and this is in regards to another point that was requested, I think, from Board Member Warren, and that is staff, County Oversight Board staff did reach out to the town, and we had that discussion, and so when we look at overhead allocation, trying to ensure that the town of Yucca Valley is not subsidizing the activity of the component unit of the redevelopment agency's activities, we do charge for that activity as we would any other special revenue. In this case, it's a component unit of the town of Yucca Valley. As an alternative, we talked about this with County Oversight Board staff, was the ability for the town, since we've done what we think we can do in terms of refinancing and providing the most value to the other taxing entities, is that if the countywide oversight board is desiring to see a different structure that provides lower costs, is to maybe entertain or having staff evaluate whether or not the oversight board the redevelopment agency administration is reverted back to the state. So, this becomes a very fundamental question, and I apologize for being a little bit long-winded, but it's at the end of the day, it's a question of are we able to use the amounts for administrative costs that are provided for in the legislation that were promised at the time that at the time that redevelopment agencies were dissolved, or is there some other expectation? And so the town of Yucca Valley is more than willing to turn over all of our activities for the redevelopment agency, the successor agency, back to the state, back to the county, if that's the desire. So we would just look for some specific direction. I guess what we would struggle with our elected officials is going back to our successor agency board and telling them that the methodology in which we recover costs is being challenged, and there's no clear direction as to what would be acceptable. So I again apologize that it's kind of at some point a philosophical question, but again, going back to the time of RDA dissolution, it was a much different picture that was painted to cities who agreed to become successor agencies than it is now, where that budget then is being asked to be tightened considerably.
All right, thank you very much for that, sir. Any other comment, any comments from the board?
Chairman, what
Yes,
I
Mayor
would
Warren.
say to this town manager is that we've been down this road with quite a few cities. I understand exactly what you're talking about, but what we're experiencing is we, as a board, have to make sure that we're comfortable with the items that you send to us before it even goes to the state. And I think in this case, we're going to have our county staff to work with this city, similar to what was done with other jurisdictions, to get this into a reasonable amount, and that it makes sense so that the board even can get to that point to assist their efforts to approve this, to go any further. We'll all talk today back and forth, but as you can see, there was not a motion made. This is not going forward. We need to have more discussion, but we do clearly understand. I understand exactly what you're saying. Our city had similar issues too, but we are finding in the environment that once it leaves, if it gets past this board, they will not approve it. So we need to work together to get this resolved.
Thank you, Mayor Warren. Certainly, no agency should have to bear costs that can be
absolutely not
that should be paid for by by these other funds. None, not one penny, and it really wasn't the total. Yeah, sure, the total amount got my attention, but I think if there had been more detail about what was behind some of those numbers, I wouldn't have had any hesitation at all, because again, if
Jessica, you can go ahead and we'll queue up just a much shorter portion of the subsequent meeting. So what staff did after this meeting was went back and stewed for a while, I guess, and then decided whether or not we wanted to bring a recommendation to the town council or to the successor agency board of, is this something that, because really you would have two choices if you wanted to continue to strive for full cost allocation.
Good morning, everybody.
When we brought back the revised amount, it was lower by about 90,000 plus or minus. So our successor agency is going to be in place until debt service is extinguished, which is 2030, either 2038 or 2048. Jordan, do you remember, is it 2038 or 2048?
2048.
I believe it's 2038 off the top of my head.
Yeah, 2038, I believe. But, I mean, so you're taking 100,000 times, I don't know, however long that is, 18 years, and it's quite a bit of money, right? So your choices would be, so the legislation says the agencies can get a maximum of $250,000 unless it is reduced by the oversight board. It's the only agency that can reduce it, not even Department of Finance, only the oversight board. The Department of Finance knows that, and they're pressuring, obviously, the oversight board to do this. And it's for the benefit of the taxing entities, which are our local agencies. And so in some ways, it is, it's your fellow taxing entities, which represents your fellow taxpayers in the area. So somewhat circular in that sense, but what we wanted to do is ensure that our actual costs are covered and a fair amount of indirect cost is provided for. I think that's very reasonable. So we went through and basically made some modifications, came back to the board in January, and just for full transparency of the board's action on that item, I just wanted to play you just a minute of that conversation. So do you have where we're starting from? Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, no problem.
Schedule and administrative budget for fiscal year 2021-22. Presenter is Jordan Gumbish, with Finance and Accounting Supervisor with the town of Yucca Valley. Is Mr. Gumbish with us? And if so, thank you for returning. from our last meeting?
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Board. This is Jordan Gumbish from the town of Yucca Valley.
Okay, welcome. Please proceed with your report.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time this morning to review the submitted ROP schedule and administrative budget for the town of Yucca Valley's fiscal year 2021-22. Town management reviewed the comments of the board members at the previous oversight board meeting and addressed those changes in the presented administrative budget. Firstly, just to run through those changes for you, the direct staff time was reviewed and reduced per the request of the board. This time reduction was also applied to legal counsel. Secondly, the indirect cost allocation was modified to remove the town's annual general service costs, and out of those costs, the town allocated solely the utility costs associated with facilities of staff administering the duties of the successor agency. The indirect cost rate applied remains at 5%, with a reduction to 4% of related human resources department expenditures. Just to note, those human resources department also includes our annual risk management costs. The total reduction in the administrative budget requested equals $80,500. Staff has provided in your agenda packet a comparison of the original budget, the current amended budget requested, and an estimate of the forthcoming last and final ROP, which is expected to be presented at the next available oversight board meeting. The town would like to thank you for your time and review of the submitted documents. If there are any other questions regarding the items, I'd be happy to answer and provide additional information.
All right,
That concludes my presentation. Just to note, Human Resources Department also includes our annual risk management costs. The total reduction in the administrative budget requested equals $80,500. Staff has provided in your agenda packet a comparison of the original budget. Was that you in the show? An estimate of the which is expected to be presented at the next available oversight board meeting. The town would like to thank you for your time and review of the submitted documents. If there are any other questions regarding the items, I'd be happy to answer.
No, I couldn't take one if it was her because she's in my shower.
Just to note, Human Resources Department also includes our
Can I ask that anybody on the phone please mute your line?
Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. Please, anyone who isn't speaking, please mute your lines because we can hear everything you're saying. Thank you. And it sounded like there was a second presenter for Yucca Valley. Do we need that person to identify themselves for the record?
I'm not sure if that was the case or it was somebody's playback because there is about a 30 to 45 second delay on the
Okay.
video. So I think it was just playing back the presenter for whoever hadn't muted their phone.
Okay, wanted to make sure that don't want to miss anyone or anything. So I'll assume that Yucca Valley is concluded with their report, and we won't be hearing from anybody who doesn't want to be heard from. And I will ask the board if they have any questions for the presenter. Any questions? Oh.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Vice
it's Cindy
Chair
Saxon. I appreciate your guys' efforts to go through this in detail and review this per our request. So as I know, the rest of the board really appreciates your efforts on this. So thank you for that.
All right. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Is there any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I will ask if anyone has submitted a speaker slip.
No speaker slips.
Okay, no speaker slips for comment on this item. Is there anyone in the audience wanting to speak on this item? Not seeing anyone, I'll bring it back to the board and ask for any final questions or comments or a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Okay, motion made by Mayor Warren. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Mr. Strong. Madam Clerk, can you take the roll, please?
Frederick Ng,
Aye.
Richard De Nava,
Aye.
Kenneth Miller,
Aye.
Cindy Sachs,
Aye.
Lawrence Strong,
Aye.
Aquanetta Warren,
Aye.
David Wirt.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right.
Thank you, Jessica. You can that. All right, so I thought it'd be helpful just to get an understanding of, because now our administrative allowance is going to be lower and it's likely going to be lower on a go-forward basis. So our next plan of action is to take the amount that we have currently, which is around 160,000. We'll probably reduce that a little bit more and bring it back to them in March as a last and final. We feel that we would be able to recapture all of our direct costs and a good portion of our indirect costs, anywhere between 100 and 150,000 on a go-forward basis. Really, the only transaction that we have is the payment of debt service. However, with that, there is just an enormous amount of paperwork that needs to be done on an annual basis. And so the town does not want to subsidize that activity at no cost. So the only other comment I would throw out there is if the board is interested in trying to go back and seek what's legislatively allowed at 250, we would have to do that likely through some type of litigation against the Department of Finance, and there's no telling at this point what our level of success would be. So I just put that out there for the council. Otherwise, Jordan can bring back up the recommendation for you this evening. It's just basically to approve the upcoming, or to ratify the existing ROPS that was approved by the Countywide Oversight Board.
The amount that's owed, that we're generating all this paperwork for, what is that, the amount of the ROP?
So ROPS covers your debt service. This is your prior redevelopment agency issued tax revenue bonds. And as part of that process, those bonds, the last issue was in 2018, which included a refinance of the ones that were issued in 2008, I believe, was our last one where we issued new money, as well as a refinance of prior debts.
Okay, so
there's a balance outstanding. Jordan, maybe you can speak to what the existing principal balance is, and then our annual debt service.
Sorry, one moment. So the annual debt service is the 584,000. I believe the remaining debt is about 20 million-ish. That might be way off, but I can bring that up for you really quick.
That's okay.
All right, and there's no other options for us to pay off this $20 million bond? It seems incredibly inefficient to spend all this money to pay one bill.
Remember that this is the successor agency, and this is successor agency debt. This is not a debt of the town of Yucca Valley.
Right.
So there would really be no mechanism, because you no longer have revenue coming in from your previous redevelopment. Remember, the redevelopment agency used to have tax increment revenue.
Right.
You don't have tax increment revenue, so you have no revenue source, you have no outstanding fund balance, nothing to pay off the existing debt. I think it's around $7 or $8 million left that needs to be paid, but that's spread over 20 years. So the mechanism that's in place is the old tax increment that was allowed for the prior redevelopment agency is still collected and accounted for. They take out from that what is owed to pay debt service and administrative fees. The rest of it then goes to the other taxing entities, which includes primarily school districts, your local Morongo Unified School District, Copper Mountain College, High Desert Water District, San Bernardino County Fire, the general fund of the County of San Bernardino. So all of those taxing entities, remember the whole scheme was to be able to free up state backfill for the schools. And so that's the mechanism that's in place. So it's going to be in place until that debt service is extinguished.
Okay. It's boggling how it gets so complex so quickly. Okay, thank you.
So the recommended action there is before you, approving the resolution, adopting the annual recognized obligation schedule, and then to ratify the ROPS that we've already posted to the Department of Finance and the other entities.
One question, please. During Jordan's comments, I think she said 80,500, and on the payment schedule shown for administrative, it's at 84.5. Was that just, did I hear it wrong, or are the numbers a little different? I think she said it twice. I believe it was 80,005, but the schedule on here is showing 84.5.
Jordan, did you hear that question?
Yes, I did. I'm not quite sure. So the total allowance. Oh, you're talking about the difference between the debt service schedule payments and
When you were speaking to the board, I think
Okay.
the administrative cost that you had come up with was, I believe, mentioned at 80,500. I just wanted to make sure I heard that clearly, of what they were told and what we're seeing here today.
It was a reduction.
Okay, I believe I might have to double check my slide, but the numbers that were presented to the board would be the final numbers.
Okay.
So if there's a discrepancy here, it would be incorrect on my slide.
Okay, so
But I can
they've
confirm
received the
that for you.
same schedule that we're seeing today then? Oh, that's fine, thank you.
Correct.
Curtis, is this an option that the state would take over this administration, or is that pretty far-fetched?
That seemed to fall on deaf ears when we had that conversation. I think county staff's perspective was there's nothing in the legislation that provides a mechanism for that to happen.
But there is legislation that provides for $250,000 for us to pay it.
Unless that's reduced by the oversight board.
And then you were talking about the possibility of not having to do the annual reports and cutting down on the paperwork?
Yeah, Jordan, can you talk a little bit about what your understanding of the last and final is and what benefit that provides us?
So my understanding of the last and final would be that the numbers we provide would give them the opportunity to approve that ROP schedule, and then we wouldn't have to go back to the county oversight board annually to prepare the schedule and go through those meetings as you saw there. And sometimes those can be much longer, especially if Yucca Valley ends up last one on the list. So it would reduce that administrative work, and then potentially the audit side of it. The county can't audit the successor agency, but they do request a lot of document backup, so that would potentially reduce that a little bit as well.
And so you mentioned providing that information to them in March, which would be ahead of the February 1st deadline?
The February 1st deadline is to submit this ROPS here that's displayed on my screen to the Department of Finance. So it would be for the upcoming, the next fiscal year, so 2022 to 2023 would be when that last and final begins, I believe, and then we would move it forward from there. So this would hopefully be the last single ROPS item.
Okay, very good. So we heard the recommendation on the agency approval and also the ratifying the delivery to the San Bernardino County Auditor Controller. Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Agency members Dennison,
Yes.
Droz,
Yes.
Lombardo,
Yes.
Schooler,
Yes.
and Chair Abel.
Yes. Future agenda items? Any public comment? All right, so we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.